Now to the world that is U.S. presidential politics this year. Republican frontrunner Donald Trump outlined his foreign policy views last week, one day after sweeping 5 primaries that moved him much closer to his party's nomination. Trump's speech was heavily critical of the Obama administration, but thin on detail, as VOA national correspondent Jim Malone reports.
Donald Trump ripped into President Barack Obama's foreign policy as reckless, rudderless, and aimless during his speech at a Washington hotel. Trump said it was time for a new foreign policy approach that puts America's interests first.
One that replaces randomness with purpose, ideology with strategy, and chaos with peace.
Trump noted past U.S. mistakes in the Middle East, including attempts at nation building, and what he regards as the mistaken belief that America can export Western-style democracy.
We tore up what institutions they had, and then were surprised at what we unleashed. Civil war, religious fanaticism, thousands of Americans and just killed, lives wasted. Horribly wasted.
Trump also promised that if elected, the Islamic State group would be gone very quickly, though he provided few details.
I will never send our finest into battle unless necessary, and I mean absolutely necessary, and will only do so if we have a plan for victory with the capital V.
Trump's speech had all the trappings of a more formal policy address, a departure from the New York billionaire's off-the-cuff stump speeches that excite supporters. It's a transformation by design, says Michael O'Hanlon.
I see this as part of an evolution where he's going to see if he can hold on to the kind of support he built up with the Republican base by being blunt, by being impolitic, and yet at the same time avoiding the excesses that made 2/3 of the country express horror at the prospect of a Trump presidency.
Trump's speech is the latest example of advisors refashioning his image in the midst of a divisive primary campaign, says John Fortier.
Well, he started to remedy that by bringing in much more experienced people from other campaigns, making outreach to the party, trying to transform himself into somewhat more of a traditional candidate. We will see how that goes.
My friend and the next Vice President of the United States, Carly Fiorina.
Meanwhile, Trump's main rival, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, sought to bolster his chances in next week's Indiana primary by naming former tech executive and failed presidential candidate Carly Fiorina as his vice presidential running mate. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
I'm Adeshewa Josh, and you're watching Africa 54. Here on the continent, maternal mortality rates are gradually declining, and Nigeria is making better health care accessible to pregnant women. Correspondent Yomi Otaigbe reports.
Pregnant women at an antenatal clinic receiving counseling and health education. Antenatal care is a specialized medical care that is to be provided by trained midwives, obstetricians, and gynecologists to ensure optimal health outcomes for a mother and her baby, and also to prevent or manage complications that may occur during pregnancy and childbirth.
The purpose of antenatal also is to categorize women who are prone to problems and those who are not prone to problems. So you differentiate between high-risk pregnancy and low-risk pregnancy.
If you go to antenatal care, there's the minimum that is expected. You must ensure that they look at the general health of the woman, they will look at the delivery pattern of the last pregnancy, they will look at past medical conditions. Is the woman hypertensive? Is she diabetic? Does she have sickle cell disease in pregnancy? Then they look at the current pregnancy. Has she been held in this pregnancy? Is she taking necessary immunization, tetanus, tozoid immunization? Is she on anti-malaria prophylaxis? Because pregnant women tend to come down with more frequent and more severe forms of malaria. Then is the baby growing very well? There are parameters you look at to look at the health of the baby. One of the things you want to really prevent in pregnancy is what they call pregnancy-induced hypertension. Going for antenatal care is not about palpating the woman's abdomen alone.
The nurses in antenatal care for them and care for their baby as well, giving them health education, on nutrition and on personal hygiene, what they are to take and what they are to engage in.
The antenatal care policy in Nigeria follows the World Health Organization approach, which recommends that the first antenatal visit should occur by the end of 16 weeks of pregnancy, the second visit between 24 and 28 weeks, the third visit at 32 weeks, and the fourth visit at 36 weeks. However, women with complications, special needs, or conditions beyond the scope of basic care may require additional visits. Despite the benefits of antenatal care, statistics from the Nigeria Demographic and Health Survey 2013 show that only 51% of women in Nigeria visit antenatal clinics in both the urban and rural areas.
If a woman should register in the first trimester, it's a big advantage. But anything before 14 weeks will be good. But preferably by the second mixed period, that is about 8 weeks of pregnancy. About 8 weeks of pregnancy is what the World Health Organization recommends for women to start their antenatal care. It's targeted that women should have at least 4 visits if there are no complications. But if there's any need to have more frequent visits, they will receive these visits. Because of this benefit it offers to the women, we encourage all women. It should be 100% attendance.
Aside from the concern over the average antenatal attendance in Nigeria, there's another common challenge that seems to go beyond the reach of health professionals.
There are those who come to us for the antenatal care, but we go and have the baby delivered at a traditional birth attendance clinic or in the church. We have that happening. There are people we even book for, say, induction of labor or for a C-section based on the things we have found, and you don't see them show up again. The next thing you hear is that she's had the baby, or you had the baby but there was a mishap.
Improving access to quality maternal health services in Nigeria involves widespread reproductive health education, the institution of effective community health insurance, and midwives service scheme. Yomi Otaibo reporting for Channels Television News.
Now, let's talk more about maternal health and the need for sustainable healthcare systems. Joining me now for that is Channels Health correspondent Yomi Otaibo. Thank you so much, Yomi, for speaking to us on Africa 54.
Thank you, Adeshawa, for having me.
Tell us, how much progress are we making in reducing maternal mortality?
If we want to look at it, let's go back a bit. And talking about the 1990s, 1980s, you would see that the rate then we used to have like more than 1,000 women out of 100,000 live births dying during pregnancy or childbirth. Then we moved down to 800. Right now we are at 576. That is 576 maternal mortality ratio. That is out of 100,000 live births. But we are not there yet. If we want to look at the Millennium Development Goal 5, which says between 1990 and 2015, the maternal mortality ratio should be reduced by 3/4. Right now, in developed countries, we have about 1 out of 3,700 women dying, just one. But in Nigeria, 1 out of 30. So really, we are not there. We've made progress, but we are not there.
So a lot of healthcare practitioners have also said that women have a lot to do in making sure that this maternal mortality continues to go down in terms of record in Nigeria. What can women do to protect themselves during the period of pregnancy?
Now, when we talk about women, it means women, let's say, from 15 to about 45. And that means if you have the intention of getting pregnant, we should start from there. Make sure you have prenatal care. That is, you go meet your healthcare provider. And here we're talking about obstetricians, gynecologists, and of course, trained midwives to get, okay, what can I do? What are the steps to take? What kind of food or medication can I take or should I not take? And when you're pregnant, you have to attend at least 4 antenatal visits. The first in trimester, second trimester, third and fourth. But if your pregnancy is categorized as being high risk, then you may have to go for more than that 4 visits. But you have to make sure antenatal care is 100%. And making it 100% is not just enough. When it's time to have the baby, you have to make sure you go back to that same place to have your baby, because we have issues whereby some women will go for the antenatal care. Okay, you want me to come, I'll come. But when it's time to have the baby, they go to the traditional birth attendants, or they go to religious houses.
Who don't have their records.
Who don't have their records, and who may not, have all of the equipment to handle any emergency.
Before we let you go, Yomi, what should the government be doing to improve healthcare systems in Nigeria?
Improving healthcare system will mean starting from the basics, and that's primary health care. The Minister of Health has said that out of the 30,000 primary healthcare centers we have in Nigeria, is going to make sure that 10,000 is functional in 2 years. We're waiting to see that. But that is the basics. And making sure that we have more and more skilled midwives. We have community health insurance. This would help. Those are the things, the basic, that yes, we should make sure that every area, whether in the urban center or in the rural areas, particularly in the rural areas where you find that there would be no functional primary health care, we need to make sure that we have skilled attendants, we have doctors, whether on a shift basis, but there should be that functional health center around everywhere in Nigeria.
Yomi Otaigbe, thank you so much for speaking to us on
Thank you
Africa
so much.
54.
Thank you.
It's time now for a short break. But before we do, we want to remind you to visit our website for all the latest information at channelstv.com any day or night. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, crop raiding by elephants can be a problem on the continent. But in Kenya, someone has found a solution that literally stings. That story after the break.